Number one, inside your mind's palace, there are no guards, only open gates and wandering ghosts. And every thought that enters comes armed and untested, stabbing at your confidence, your peace, your sense of control, and you've mistaken this invasion for intelligence, for depth, for being a thinker, when in truth it's undisciplined power tearing down your own walls from the inside. You feel it most at night, when the noise of the world fades and the noise of your mind gets loud. When your body is tired but your brain drags you through every memory, every conversation, every mistake, every possible future disaster, as if replaying pain can somehow protect you from it. It can't. Overthinking is not your gift. Overthinking is your throne given to panic. Machiavelli wrote about rulers who lose their states not because they are weak, but because they fail to rule themselves, and that's you right now. A prince with no command over his internal kingdom, letting fear sit in the royal chair and sign decrees in your name. Your fears speak louder than your logic. Your guilt speaks louder than your plans. Your anxiety whispers orders and you obey without question, so you move like a ghost through your own life, haunted, restless, calling it, "I can't stop thinking," as if it's some noble curse. It's not. You don't think too much. You think badly. You let thoughts wander with no discipline, no criteria, no standard, and you treat your mind like a public market instead of a fortress. A palace is not meant to be a circus. It is meant to be a capital, a center of cold rule where every corridor obeys you, every chamber reflects your will, and nothing chaotic survives for long. You don't need less thought. You need sharper thought, cleaner thought, colder thought, strategy instead of spirals, command instead of chaos. You are not here to feel safe. You are here to become untouchable, and that starts with one brutal realization. Your mind is not a diary where you endlessly spill emotion. It is a weapon, and right now, you are holding it by the blade and bleeding for nothing. Tonight, I want you to see that every unnecessary replay, every exaggerated fear, every imaginary argument is not harmless. It is treason inside your own walls. And from this moment on, you will start treating overthinking not as your personality, but as the enemy commander you are about to remove. Number two, overthinking is not analysis. It's anxiety dressed in formal clothes, and you've been flattering it for years, calling it being careful, being deep, being thorough, when in reality it has never once moved you forward, only kept you circling the same fears in tighter and tighter loops while life passes you by. Real analysis has an objective: understand, decide, act. Overthinking has no destination. It only wants to keep you busy, drained, and hesitant, because hesitation feels safe to a mind addicted to control. Machiavelli understood this better than you think. He knew that a ruler who gets lost in possibilities loses his timing, and timing is power. The world doesn't pause while you debate every outcome. Your enemies don't freeze while you run mental simulations. Opportunities don't hold their breath while you sit on the edge, trying to feel ready. You call it intelligence, but let's be cold. Overthinking is cowardice with a high vocabulary. It's your fear learning to speak in long sentences. You don't replay that conversation 10 times to grow. You replay it to punish yourself, to keep yourself small, to make sure you never risk that kind of vulnerability again. You don't imagine worst-case scenarios to prepare. You imagine them to surrender in advance, to feel the pain without ever taking the step. That's not wisdom. That's self-sabotage. A stoic man looks at reality and asks two hard questions. What is under my control and what is not? Then he acts on the first and discards the second. No extra drama, no poetic suffering, just movement. He knows he will never have perfect information, so he stops waiting for it. He knows he will never be certain, so he stops worshiping certainty. You want to be untouchable? Then you must accept this. You will act without guarantees. You will choose without knowing everything. You will risk being wrong, and you will survive anyway. That is masculine calm, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear write your script. From now on, when your mind starts its endless commentary, you cut it down to one brutal question. Is this helping me decide, or is this helping me delay? If it's delay, it dies. Strategy is subtraction, not addition. Power is not in how many thoughts you have, but in how many you are willing to kill. Number 3. Inside your mind's palace, there is a council chamber where every part of you screams for attention. Fear, ambition, ego, shame, desire, laziness, hope. And overthinking is what happens when you let them all talk at once with no order, no ranking, no discipline, just noise masquerading as depth. Machiavelli wrote for princes surrounded by advisors with hidden agendas, and that's exactly what lives in your head. Inner voices that sound honest but are secretly protecting their own comfort, their own survival. One voice tells you to stay safe, one tells you to prove yourself, one tells you you're nothing, one tells you to wait just a little longer, and because you never learned to rule them, you believe whichever one yells the loudest at the moment. That's not leadership. That's a coup on repeat. A real ruler listens selectively. He knows which advisor is useful and which is a coward, which is paranoid and which is wise, which must be heard and which must be tolerated but ignored. You must do the same with your thoughts. Some thoughts are scouts. They bring you data, they warn you of real risks, they help you adapt. Some thoughts are saboteurs. They bring you only worst-case visions, only personal attacks, only reasons to stand still and die slowly. Overthinking begins when you treat all of them as equal, when you give every passing emotion the same weight as hard evidence. That ends now. Machiavellian thinking is not about being evil, it's about being effective. It's about looking at a thought and asking one simple, brutal question. Does this help me win in reality, or does this only keep me busy in my head? If it moves you towards strength, strategy, clarity, it gets a seat at the table. If it pulls you backward into shame, paralysis, or pointless fantasy, it gets exiled. No more long negotiations with cowardly thoughts. No more emotional speeches from the part of you that wants to stay weak and call it just who I am. In your mind's palace, you are no longer a confused boy listening to every voice. You are a cold sovereign deciding who speaks and who is silenced. Without that inner hierarchy, you will always be ruled by your loudest anxiety. With it, overthinking becomes what it should have been all along. Background noise outside the throne room, begging to be let in while you carry on ruling without flinching. Number 4, dark psychology starts with an insult to your ego. Your mind does not care if you are happy, it cares if you are alive, and it will gladly torture you with fear, shame, and worst-case fantasies if it believes that will keep you breathing one more day. And that primitive logic is exactly why you overthink yourself into exhaustion and call it being careful. Your brain was built for jungles and predators, not deadlines and unread messages. So it constantly scans for danger, imagining attacks where there are only opinions, imagining exile where there is just silence, imagining death where there is only discomfort. That guard dog inside your skull barks at every shadow, and because you never trained it, it bites you more than it protects you. You lie in bed, replaying moments, reliving embarrassments, rehearsing disasters, and your heart races as if something is actually happening because the body doesn't distinguish between a thought vividly imagined and a threat directly faced. No wonder you wake up tired. You've survived 100 imaginary wars before sunrise. Machiavellian awareness is the moment you stop being naive about this process. You understand that your mind is biased toward the negative, not because you are cursed, but because evolution chose overreaction over underreaction. Better to jump at a harmless noise than ignore the one that kills you. Good for survival, terrible for peace. This is where stoicism enters like a cold general. Just because your brain screams does not mean you mobilize. You become the ruler who listens to panicked reports and says, "We verify before we act." You watch your anxiety spin its stories. They hate you, you'll fail, you'll be alone, you're not enough. And instead of kneeling, you interrogate. Is there proof? Is there strategy? Is there anything here but adrenaline? Dark psychology isn't about making you cruel to others. It's about making you aware of how cruel your own wiring can be to you. Once you see the mechanism, the spell breaks. Overthinking stops feeling like a mysterious fog and starts looking like what it really is, a survival system running on outdated settings. From that point, your job is not to believe every signal, but to filter them, to separate real threat from emotional noise. You are not the dog, you are the handler. And a trained beast under command becomes protection. Untrained, it will keep dragging you through mental hell and calling it safety. Number 5, power is not in how loud you feel, it's in how little you flinch. And overthinking has turned you into a man who reacts to everything and rules nothing, a king jumping at every echo in his own hall, mistaking emotional turbulence for proof that something is wrong with him, when the truth is simpler and colder. You've been worshiping your emotions instead of commanding them. Stoic masculinity is not numbness, it's hierarchy. Feelings are allowed, but they are not allowed to rule. Right now, every flicker of shame, every stab of insecurity, every wave of doubt becomes an emergency, and your mind rushes to build stories around it. Why you're not enough, why they don't respect you, why your future is doomed. That's overthinking's favorite fuel. Unfiltered feeling turned into absolute narrative. Machiavelli would look at that and laugh. No ruler grants absolute power to anyone, especially not to the most unstable voices in the palace. When shame shows up and says, "You embarrassed yourself," you don't have to collapse. You can answer, "Good. Now I know where to improve." When fear shows up screaming, "This will go wrong," you can respond, "Maybe, and I'll handle it." When sadness whispers, "Nothing matters," you can counter with, "Then I am free to choose what does." That is emotional judo, using the weight of the feeling to move you instead of pinning you down. Overthinking is emotional worship because every feeling becomes a pretext for hours of mental analysis, breakdown, and self-attack. From now on, you draw a line. Feelings are signals, not scriptures. They are weather, not law. You can be stormy inside and still move with precision. You can feel insecure and still act like a man with a mission. You can be afraid and still say, "We go." Power is the ability to move in spite of your inner climate. That's what makes you untouchable. Not that nothing shakes you, but that nothing stops you. So when the next wave hits, and it will, you don't ask, "Why am I like this?" You ask, "What is this feeling trying to protect? What is the smallest strong move I can make right now?" Then you make it. No spiral, no monologue, just a decision. Over time, your emotions will learn their new place. Advisors, not dictators. And your overthinking will wither, starved of the drama it used to feed on. Number 6, overthinking feeds on one addiction you don't like to admit. Your hunger for approval, your obsession with how you look in other people's minds, and as long as their imagined judgment matters more than your actual mission, you will stay stuck in mental rehearsals instead of real movement. You don't lose sleep over pure logic. You lose sleep over how they saw you, what they meant by that comment, whether they secretly laughed, whether they'll talk about you when you leave the room. That social fear is the fuel of your spirals. Machiavelli understood the power of image, but he also knew that a ruler who lives for the crowd's love becomes their puppet. You're doing the same thing privately, rewriting messages 10 times, replaying how you stood, how you sounded, how you smiled, as if the world is a courtroom and you're always on trial. Here's a colder truth. People are too consumed with their own insecurities to catalog yours. And the ones who do are so small, their opinion is worthless to your destiny. Cold power psychology says, use perception strategically, but never worship it. You care enough to be precise, not enough to be paralyzed. When your mind starts its usual noise, they'll judge you, they won't respect you, they'll think you're cringy. You answer with a new principle. They're allowed their thoughts, and I'm allowed my path. You don't owe anyone a performance that kills your progress. Stoic masculinity means you anchor your value internally, by your effort, your discipline, your alignment with who you choose to be, not by claps from people who wouldn't bleed for you. Every time you hold back to avoid imaginary criticism, you teach your nervous system that their approval is more important than your evolution. That ends now. You will be misunderstood. You will be disliked. You will be talked about. Good. Let them talk while you build. Let them whisper while you sharpen. Let them guess while you execute. Overthinking cannot survive in a mind that no longer begs to be liked. From now on, your question is not, what will they think? But does this move me closer to the man I intend to become? If the answer is yes, you do it. If the answer is no, you don't. Simple, ruthless, free. Number 7. Overthinking is your addiction to perfect conditions, your secret belief that one day the fog will clear, the fear will vanish, the signs will align, and then you'll finally move. And that fantasy is exactly why you stay stuck. Because real power never waits for perfect, it moves through uncertainty like a blade through smoke. Machiavelli would rather have a flawed, decisive ruler than a brilliant, hesitant one. Because history is written by those who acted, not by those who almost did. You right now are living in almost started, almost spoke, almost changed, almost walked away. That's the true cost of overthinking, a life made of almost. The masculine, stoic path is brutally different. It accepts a hard rule. You will never have all the information. You will be wrong sometimes. You will misjudge, misstep, miscalculate, and you will survive. A man becomes untouchable not by avoiding mistakes, but by becoming unbreakable when they happen. The overthinker says, what if I choose wrong? The strategist says, if I choose wrong, I will adapt faster than everyone else. That's the shift. You stop worshiping the idea of the flawless move and start respecting the reality of momentum. Every time you delay, you teach your nervous system that fear is the boss. Every time you act while afraid, you train your system to obey you instead. So from now on, when you feel that mental storm, options multiplying, scenarios flooding in, panic wanting to drag you into a spreadsheet of infinite outcomes, you give yourself a hard deadline. I decide by this time. I pick the best option with the data I have. I move. Then no revisiting, no, maybe I should have. No going back to redesign the past like it's a draft. You make post-game notes, not self-executions. This is how you quietly become dangerous. You move while others think, you learn while others hesitate, you adapt while others debate. Overthinking keeps asking, what if? Power keeps answering, we'll handle it. Write that into your bones. I will handle it. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but relentlessly. That sentence kills 1,000 excuses and leaves you with the only thing that was ever real. The next concrete step, taken now, not someday. Number 8. Your inner voice is the most dangerous strategist in your palace because it knows every wound, every insecurity, every failure, and it uses them like knives, and overthinking is what happens when you let that voice speak without ever questioning its loyalty. Listen to how you talk to yourself in the dark. You're not enough. You always mess it up. They're all ahead of you. You're too late. You're broken. That isn't honesty. That's psychological warfare turned inward. Dark psychology becomes power when you stop being the victim of that voice and start becoming its interrogator. Machiavelli would never trust an advisor who only brings bad news with no solutions, yet you trust a narrative that does nothing but drag you down and call it realism. From now on, any thought that attacks you without offering a path forward is treated as a traitor. You don't just swallow it, you sit it down and cross-examine it. You're not good enough. Compared to who, in what skill, based on what evidence, and if that's true, what stops you from training? You always fail. Always, or did you just hurt and decide to exaggerate? Exactly where did you fail and what variable was missing? Knowledge, discipline, time, guidance. Each precise question cracks the spell of those vague, heavy statements. Stoic masculinity doesn't replace self-hate with fake affirmations. It replaces it with accurate assessments. Not I'm useless, but I am underdeveloped in this area, and development is under my control. Not no one respects me, but I have not yet become a man whose standards demand respect, and that process starts now. You see the difference? One keeps you in a loop, the other gives you a lever. Overthinking thrives on vague self-criticism because it has infinite space to spin stories. Precision kills the spin. Machiavellian thinking means you use your inner voice like a tool of governance. strict but not cruel, honest but not suicidal. You speak to yourself the way a hardened general speaks to a young soldier, direct about weaknesses, relentless about potential. No coddling, no cursing, just clarity and command. When your inner strategist starts working for you instead of against you, your mind's palace changes temperature. The same brain that once shredded you now sharpens you. The same memories that once haunted you now instruct you. And overthinking, robbed of its favorite weapon, unquestioned self-abuse, starts to starve in the silence of your new discipline. Number 9, pain is the tax you pay for existing in this world, and overthinking is the interest you keep adding on top, compounding every wound into a lifetime sentence because you refuse to let the moment die, and Machiavellian logic has no patience for that kind of waste. A ruler cannot keep reliving lost battles while new threats gather at his gates, yet that's exactly what you do, replaying the breakup, the humiliation, the failure, the betrayal, as if the replay itself will one day produce a different outcome. It won't. The arrow has already left the bow. The only thing still moving is your mind, stabbing you with the same memory in higher resolution. Dark psychology says this: your brain replays pain to keep you cautious, to make sure you don't walk into that fire again. But without control, that caution mutates into paralysis. You learn the wrong lesson. Not I must move smarter, but I must never move at all. Stoic masculinity rejects that. It looks at every painful event and strips it down to cold components. What happened? What part was in my control? What part wasn't? What pattern do I see? What can I do differently next time? That's it. No drama, no romanticizing suffering, no turning your heartbreak into your personality. Machiavellian thinking uses everything: losses, wins, enemies, allies. Nothing is thrown away, but nothing is worshipped either. That betrayal? It becomes a lesson in reading people. That humiliation? A lesson in preparation, timing, or pride. That failure? A lesson in skill gaps, arrogance, or patience. You convert raw pain into structured information, then into strategy. Overthinking takes your past and keeps you kneeling in front of it. Power takes your past and forges it into armor. Untouchable does not mean nothing hurt you. It means nothing owns you anymore. Not that ex, not that friend, not that mistake, not that night you still think about when the room goes quiet. You can acknowledge it without reliving it, remember it without re-dying in it. You are allowed to say, it happened, it shaped me, it is over, I am not. From that moment, every time your mind drags you back into the old scene, you don't dive in. You stand at the door, take the lesson, and walk away. The scene stays in the past. The strength walks out with you. Number 10. Inside your mind's palace, a quiet war has been raging for years, and until now you've been fighting on the wrong side, handing over weapons to your fears, building thrones for your doubts, and calling it just how I am. But that story ends here, because a man who wants to become untouchable must stage a coup inside his own head and drag the old ruler, overthinking, off the throne. You've seen it clearly now. Overthinking isn't your depth. It's your undisciplined survival instinct misfiring, hijacking your intelligence, and using it to build cages instead of strategies. You've seen how Machiavellian thinking demands effectiveness over comfort, how stoic masculinity demands action over drama, how dark psychology exposes the tricks your own brain plays on you, using shame to keep you small, using social fear to keep you obedient, using the past to keep you kneeling. That knowledge alone is not enough. Power is not what you understand. Power is what you apply. From this point on, your mind's palace is under new management. You will decide which thoughts are allowed to stay. You will decide which emotions are signals and which are noise. You will decide when to move, not your anxiety, not your guilt, not your craving to be liked. Untouchable doesn't mean you never shake. It means the shaking doesn't change your direction. It means you can feel fear and still walk into the room. It means you can feel doubt and still make the call. It means you can remember the past and still refuse to live there. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be precise, relentless and hard to stop. The man you were, the one who spiraled at night, who begged for signs, who worshipped other people's opinions, is already fading. Every decision you make from this moment is either feeding him or starving him. Choose who eats. If this hit you, if you felt something inside you recognizing itself in every word and getting angry enough to change, then don't let this just be another video you watch and forget while your mind goes back to its old tricks. Claim this. Anchor it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this is not the last time I'm coming for your weakness, and the next time, we're going to carve even sharper weapons out of the chaos in your head.